Good afternoon. We're continuing with the laws of davening, and today we're going to talk about a halacha related to what we mentioned before, that if you have to stop davening for any reason, and you stop davening for a certain amount of time, let's say you stop davening for the length of time that it takes to daven Shmona Esrei, so you had to remain silent for about 5 minutes. An example might be that you're in the middle of davening and you smelt a stench of feces. Maybe there was a diaper somewhere, or something disgusting like you smell urine, so you're not allowed to daven. So maybe you had to wait until the smell went away, and the time you waited was 5 or 10 minutes, which was the time that it takes to finish davening. So do you have to go and start from the beginning? So that's the halacha we're going to be talking about. And we're going to see there are some details, and it might get slightly complicated, but not too bad. There are some details. It depends. We're going to see that it depends what the reason that you stopped for, if you stopped voluntarily or if it was a circumstance beyond your control. And we're going to see that even if you had to stop because of a circumstance that was beyond your control, it may make a difference what that circumstance was. So we'll see that. I'm not sure if we'll finish this halacha today, but we'll get started. Bechol makom shepaisek, every time that you have to stop davening. Now again, we're talking here where you had to pause at your davening and you were quiet. We're not talking about a case where you spoke. And we'll get to that halacha, God willing, soon. If you started talking to your friend in the middle of davening, do you have to go back to the beginning? We're talking about where you were just silent. You didn't. You were just quiet for a period of time. So bechol makom sheposek im shal kadei ligmor es kulo. If you waited the time that it takes to finish the entire Shmona Esrei, chozer l'rosh, then you have to go back to the beginning of the Shmona Esrei. So let's say you're in Sim Shalom, you're towards the end of Shmona Esrei, and someone didn't realize you were davening, and they put a diaper near you, and the stench. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nowhere you can go, and you waited 5-10 minutes till they realized and removed the diaper. You have to go back, even though you're at the end of Shmona Esrei. You have to go back and start from the beginning. Ve'im lav chozer l'tchilas habracha shepasek ba. But if you don't wait that long, you wait less than the time it takes to finish the entire Shmona Esrei, then you just go back to the beginning of the blessing where you were. So if you're like in the middle of V'lu Yerushalayim Ircha, you're in the middle of that bracha, and you had to wait a certain amount of time. We'll soon see what that amount of time is. But it wasn't, 5 or 10 minutes, the time it takes to daven Shmona Esrei, then you just have to go back to the beginning of the bracha. V'im pasak begimel rishonos, chozer l'rosh. V'im ba'achronos, chozer l'ritzei. And if you had to stop during the first 3 blessings, or the last 3 blessings, then you go back to the beginning of Shmona Esrei. Or if it was in the last 3 blessings, you go back to ritzei. We're going to see the reason is because the first 3 blessings and the last 3 blessings are considered one unit. So you don't want to break up that unit. So now we're going to learn the Mishnah Berurah and learn some details, and it's not going to get too complicated, but we'll try our best. And we're going to have a lot of details, so at the end we'll go back and try to review it, and we'll get everything clear. So im shaha, afilu rak shtika ba'alma bli dibor, even if you just, va'afilu rak ben bracha la, even if the waiting was just, you were silent. We're not talking about speech. And even if it was only between blessing to blessing. And we'll talk about what happens, the differences if you spoke. But not right now. Kula. Afilo omid besof hatfila misharin metchila hatfila ad sofa. Now, even if, let's say you were at the end of Shmona Esrei, so you're in Sim Shalom, the last blessing, and something happened and you had to wait, and you were quiet during the Shmona Esrei for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is, the time it takes to do the Shmona Esrei, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. So it doesn't matter if you're at the beginning of the Shmona Esrei or the end of Shmona Esrei. Chozer, v'im lo chozer l'rosh. Let's say you're in one of these situations where you waited the entire time to daven the whole Shmona Esrei, and you really had to go back, and you didn't go back. You just finished off. You're at the end of Sim Shalom, and you just finished off. So what is the halacha then? Does your Shmona Esrei count? El l'makom shepasak u'gemara tzarich lachzor l'rosh lispal kol tefillah. You have to go back and you have to start Shmona Esrei again. You have to redo Shmona Esrei. However, this is going to be a qualification. V'hani mili shahayon is gamor. Aval ones listim ukahai gavna sheniskar lael b'diavad yatsa. De'ulai halacha kayeshomrim hamekilim hanal dezelo mikre ones. So this is where we get to a differentiation for the types, for the reason that you stop davening Shmona Esrei. There's something called an onus gamor, and then there's an onus which is from something else, which is caused from another source, we'll say. An onus is when something happens that is beyond your control. So in general, there's two reasons why maybe you were quiet during Shmona Esrei. One reason is because you felt like being quiet. It was your decision. Okay, but that's not the case we're talking about. We're talking about a case where you had to stop davening Shmona Esrei. So one reason that you had to stop davening Shmona Esrei is because somebody came and you smelled something that was a very disgusting smell, like feces or something like that. So that means the place where you're davening is no longer fit to pray. So that's called an onus gamor. That's something totally beyond your control. And for sure in that case, you have to go back to the beginning if you waited for a long time. However, if the reason that you had to stop is because of another reason, let's say there were thieves that came, meaning there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the place that you're davening, you just couldn't finish Shmona Esrei because there were thieves coming, you had to get out of the way and you had to hide, or the cases that we had before where there's an animal coming at you and you had to get away from the animal, or there was a wagon coming. In those cases, that's not considered an onus gamor, the Mishnah Berurah paskins. So he says, in that case, if that's the reason that you stopped, so in that case, and you have to go back to the beginning. But let's say you didn't go back to the beginning. Then you can just finish, then you do not have to repeat Shemona Esrei. So just to summarize what we just said, if you stopped in the middle of Shemona Esrei due to situations that were beyond your control, and the time that you waited was the time it takes to daven Shemona Esrei, let's say 7 minutes, so you have to go back to the beginning. Now let's say you didn't go back to the beginning, so then it depends. If the reason that you had to stop was because the place where you're davening was not fit to pray because of a putrid smell or something like that, and you didn't go back, then you have to go back and you have to repeat Shemona Esrei. However, if the reason you stopped was because of some other reason, some outside factor like you had to move because of a wild animal or thieves or something like that, and then even though you were supposed to go back, but even though you didn't go back, then you don't have to go back to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Okay, so I know there were a lot of details there. We're still in the middle of this halacha. We'll finish tomorrow. But if you want to give me a call, we can go over it and talk about it just to solidify all of these laws, because sometimes in the halachas when there's a lot of details, one needs to go over it many times to make sure that they have it. Okay. Have a great day.